Jake Morrison pulled his cargo ship into the docking bay of Nexus Station. A massive space station spun slowly in the darkness between stars. Lights from 100 different alien ships blinked like colorful stars around the station. Jake had been coming here for 5 years, but the sight still amazed him. He walked through the ship's cargo hold, checking the sealed containers one more time. Inside were rare metals from Earth that many alien species wanted badly. The blue crystals from the planet Vorthik were especially valuable. Jake had spent months gathering these materials, and today he hoped to make the biggest deal of his life. The station's artificial gravity felt good under his feet as he stepped off his ship. The air smelled like metal and cleaning chemicals, mixed with strange scents from alien visitors. Creatures of all shapes and sizes moved through the corridors. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others crawled or floated. Jake had learned not to stare anymore. He made his way to the merchant district, where the real business happened. The trading hall was enormous, with a curved ceiling that showed a view of the stars outside. Hundreds of booths filled the space, each one run by traders from different worlds. The noise was incredible. Alien languages mixed together in a constant buzz of conversation. Jake found the booth he was looking for. Behind the counter stood HFY, a tall alien with blue scales that covered his entire body. His people were called Caltharians, and they took business very seriously. HFY's dark eyes watched Jake approach. His mouth had no lips, just a line that could open to show sharp teeth. "Human Morrison," HFY said in perfect English. His voice sounded like gravel rolling down a hill. "You have brought the materials we discussed?" "I have," Jake replied. He placed a small device on the counter. It showed a list of everything in his cargo hold. Rare earth metals, processed uranium, and those Vorthik crystals you wanted. All of it exactly as promised. HFY's scales shifted from blue to a deeper purple color. Jake had learned this meant the alien was pleased. Excellent. And in return, I offer my finest Caltharian energy cells and navigation crystals. The deal we agreed upon. But Jake shook his head. "Actually, I want to change our deal." The purple color drained from HFY's scales, replaced by an angry red. "We have an agreement, human." "My people do not break their word. I'm not breaking anything," Jake said calmly. "I'm offering you something better. Instead of just the materials, I'll throw in the blueprints for human atmospheric processors. The machines that can turn dead planets into worlds where your people can live." HFY went very still. Jake knew he had hit something important. The Caltharians needed new worlds badly. Their home system was getting crowded, and they had been looking for ways to expand. "What do you want in return?" HFY asked. "Everything. You have all your energy cells, navigation crystals, and those rare metals you picked up from the Centauri system." "The whole shipment." "Impossible," HFY hissed. "That cargo is worth 10 times what you offer," Jake smiled. "Then prove it. 1 game of Quantum Nexus. If you win, you get everything I have, including the processor blueprints, for free. If I win, I get your entire shipment." Quantum Nexus was a strategy game that traders played throughout the galaxy. It used a board that changed shape based on the moves players made. Jake had been practicing for months, learning from some of the best players on Earth. HFY's scales went through several color changes. Finally, they settled on a determined orange. "Very well, but we play by traditional rules. No time limits. No assistance from computers." "Agreed." They moved to a gaming table in the center of the trading hall. Word spread quickly that a high-stakes game was starting. Soon, dozens of aliens gathered around to watch. The Quantum Nexus board materialized in the air above the table, a complex web of glowing lines and points. The game began slowly. Both Players made careful moves, testing each other's strategies. Jake had studied Caltharian playing styles, and he could see that HFY was following classic patterns. The alien was good, but he was predictable. As the game continued, Jake began to take control. He captured key points on the board and forced HFY into defensive positions. The crowd grew larger, and Jake could hear betting starting among the watchers. HFY's scales began changing colors rapidly, showing his stress. In Caltharian culture, losing a public game like this was deeply shameful. Jake almost felt sorry for him, but business was business. "You cannot win," HFY said, his voice tight with worry. "I think I already have," Jake replied, making a move that trapped 3 of HFY's pieces. The alien stared at the board for a long time. His scales went through a dozen different colors before settling on deep blue, which Jake had learned meant despair. "I offer additional terms," HFY said suddenly. "The game isn't over yet," Jake pointed out. "It will be soon. We both know." This, HFY's voice was barely a whisper. "I cannot return to my family with such a loss. Therefore, I add to the wager. If you win, you also receive my daughter." The crowd went silent. Jake stared at the alien, not sure he had heard correctly. "Your what?" "My daughter, Lyra. She will serve you until the debt is repaid. This is our way. The debt of honor must be satisfied." "I don't want your daughter," Jake said quickly. "I just want to do business." "Too late," said a mechanical voice from above. The station's artificial intelligence had been recording the game. Under Galactic Commerce Code Section 12, all terms of a witnessed wager are binding once stated and acknowledged. The human Morrison has acknowledged the terms by responding to them. Jake felt his stomach drop. Around them, the alien crowd was murmuring in dozens of languages. He looked at HFY, who was staring at the game board with scales so dark they were almost black. "Let's just finish the game," Jake said. 5 moves later, it was over. Jake had won completely. HFY's remaining pieces were trapped with no possible moves. The alien stood up slowly, his whole body shaking. "I will have my daughter brought to your ship," HFY said. His voice sounded dead. "And my cargo will be transferred as agreed." "Wait," Jake started to say, but HFY was already walking away, pushing through the crowd. Several other Caltharians followed him, their scales showing colors Jake had never seen before. Jake stood alone at the gaming table, surrounded by aliens who were all staring at him. He had won the biggest deal of his career, but he felt like he had lost something important. In a few hours, he would be responsible for someone he had never met, bound by laws he didn't understand. The station's AI spoke again. "Cargo transfer will begin in 1 hour. Personnel transfer will follow galactic protocols for sentient beings. Please report to Docking Bay 7 to complete the transaction." Jake walked back toward his ship, his mind spinning. He had come to the station to make money, not to become responsible for another person's life. But the rules were clear, and in space, breaking galactic law meant never being able to trade again. He wondered what Lyra was like, and what she thought about being wagered like a piece of cargo. Most of all, he wondered how he was going to explain this to her when she arrived. Jake paced around his ship's main cabin, checking the time every few minutes. 3 hours had passed since the game ended. HFY's cargo had been loaded into his ship's hold, but there was still no sign of his daughter. Jake hoped maybe the alien had changed his mind, or found some way out of the deal. A soft chime from the ship's computer told him someone was at the airlock. Jake's stomach tightened as he walked to the entrance. Through the small window, he could see a figure in a long dark robe standing in the corridor. Jake opened the airlock door. The person in the robe was shorter than him, with the hood pulled up to hide their face. It carried a single bag made of some kind of woven material. "I am Lyra Zephdara," a voice said from inside the hood. The voice was clearly female, with the same rough quality all Caltharians had, but somehow gentler than her father's. "I have come to fulfill my father's debt." "Please, come in," Jake said, stepping back. "You don't have to keep your hood up." Lyra walked into the ship, but kept her face hidden. "Where would you like me to put my belongings?" Well, first, maybe we should talk. I have questions about this whole situation. You are my master now. You do not need to ask me questions." Jake felt uncomfortable with the word master. "I'm not your master. I'm Jake, just Jake, and I think there's been a misunderstanding here." Lyra finally pulled back her hood. Jake had seen other Caltharians before, but Lyra was different. Her scales were smaller and more delicate than her father's, covering her face and neck in intricate patterns. They shifted between deep blue and purple as he watched. Her eyes were large and dark, with no white showing around the edges. She was beautiful in a way that was completely alien, but somehow familiar. "There is no misunderstanding," she said. "My father wagered me in a legal bet. You won. Now I belong to you until the debt is repaid or you choose to release me. But I don't want to own another person. Humans don't do that anymore." Lyra's scales shifted to a bright red color, and Jake could see she was upset. "Are you rejecting me? Do you find me unworthy to serve?" "No, that's not what I mean at all. You seem very worthy. I just don't believe in owning people." "Then what am I supposed to do?" Lyra's voice rose, and her scales went through rapid color changes. "If you reject me, I bring shame to my entire family line. My father will be ruined. My younger brothers will never be able to marry. My name will be spoken as a curse for generations." Jake held up his hands. Okay. Let's calm down and figure this out. Can you explain your culture to me? Help me understand what this means to your people." Lyra took several deep breaths, and her scales slowly returned to blue. "In Caltharian society, honor is more important than life. When my father made the wager, he put our family's honor on the line. If the debt is not properly paid, we become outcasts. No one will trade with us, marry us, or even speak to us." "But you didn't agree to be wagered. How is that fair?" "Fair?" Lyra looked confused. "I am my father's daughter. His honor is my honor. His debts are my debts. This is the way it has always been." Jake sat down in one of the ship's chairs, trying to process this. "What exactly are you supposed to do for me?" "Whatever you require. I can cook, clean, maintain equipment, help with business negotiations. I have been educated in trade practices, xenobiology, and interstellar economics. I speak 17 languages and understand the customs of 43 different species." 43 species? Jake was impressed despite himself. "How old are you? 26 standard years? Old enough to be useful, young enough to learn your specific requirements." Jake had been trading in space for 8 years, and he only understood maybe a dozen alien cultures well enough to do business with them. The idea that someone so young could know so much was amazing. "What happens if I try to treat you as an equal partner instead of a servant?" Lyra's scales shifted to yellow, which Jake didn't recognize. "I do not understand. Partners are equals who choose to work together. I am bound to serve you, whether I choose to or not. But what if I give you a choice? What if I let you decide what work you want to do and pay you a fair share of any profits we make?" "That would be ... Lyra paused, her scales cycling through several colors. "That would be very strange. But if it is what you require of me, I will try to understand." Jake realized this was going to be more complicated than he thought. "Let me show you around the ship first. Then we can figure out how to make this work." He gave her a tour of the small cargo vessel. The ship had a main cabin that served as kitchen, dining room, and office. There were 2 small bedrooms, a bathroom, and the cargo hold. Everything was designed for efficiency rather than comfort. "You can have the spare bedroom," Jake said. "It's not much, but it's private." "You would give me private space?" Lyra's scales turned bright yellow again. "Of course. Everyone needs privacy. This is unexpected. Servants in Caltharian households sleep in common areas." "Well, you're not in a Caltharian household anymore." Lyra put her bag in the spare room, then returned to the main cabin. "What would you like me to do first?" Jake thought about this. "Actually, I could use help with something. I have a meeting tomorrow with some traders from the Centauri system. I've never dealt with their species before." "Do you know anything about them?" "The Centaurians?" "Yes, they are very formal people. They consider it rude to look directly at someone during business negotiations. You must always address the eldest member of their group first, and never touch anything without permission." "Really?" "I would have made a terrible mistake." "They also value gifts that show knowledge of their culture. They collect small, beautiful objects. A simple crystal or polished stone would be appropriate." Jake smiled. "See, this is exactly the kind of help I need. You're not just a servant, Lyra. You're someone with valuable knowledge and skills." Her scales shifted to a color Jake hadn't seen before, a soft green mixed with gold. "You speak strangely. For a master. I told you, I'm not your master. How about we try something? For the next few weeks, you help me with my business, and I'll teach you about human customs. We'll split any profits from deals where your knowledge helps us succeed. If you don't like the arrangement, you can leave any time." "Leave?" Lyra's scales went bright red. "I cannot leave. The debt must be repaid. Then we'll consider the debt repaid when you've helped me make enough profit to equal what your father lost. Deal?" Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Her scales went through a complex pattern of colors before settling on deep blue. "I do not understand you, Jake Morrison, but I will try this strange human arrangement." "Good. Now, are you hungry?" "I was about to make dinner. You cook your own food?" "Who else would cook it? Your servants," Jake laughed. "I don't have any servants. Just me, trying to figure out how to run a business and not starve at the same time." For the first time since she had arrived, Lyra's scales showed a faint pattern that Jake thought might be amusement. "Perhaps I could help with the cooking. It would be practice for understanding human customs." "I'd like that," Jake said. "But first, tell me about yourself. What's your favorite food? What do you like to do when you're not working? What makes you happy?" Lyra's scales went yellow again, and Jake realized this meant she was confused or uncertain. "No one has ever asked me such questions." "Well, I'm asking now. If we're going to be working together, I want to know who you are as a person." Lyra sat down across from him, her scales slowly shifting to that soft green-gold color. "I like to study star charts and learn about new worlds. I enjoy solving puzzles and reading about different cultures. And I have always wondered what it would be like to choose my own path in life. Maybe now you'll get the chance to find out," Jake said as they prepared dinner together. Jake watched Lyra's scales shift through colors he was beginning to understand. She was scared, confused, and curious all at the same time. He didn't know how this arrangement would work out, but he was determined to help her discover what it meant to have choices, even if it meant learning an entirely new way of thinking about honor, debt, and freedom. 3 months had passed since Lyra came aboard Jake's ship. What started as an awkward arrangement had grown into something neither of them expected. They had completed 7 successful trades together, and their profits were higher than anything Jake had managed on his own. Lyra stood at the ship's navigation console, her scales showing the calm blue-green color that Jake had learned meant she was focused and content. She was plotting their course to the Rigel system, where they had a meeting with gas-breathing aliens called Etherians. The atmospheric pressure in their habitat dome will be 3 times what we're used to, Lyra said without looking up from her work. We'll need to wear pressure suits, and we cannot stay longer than 2 hours without risking health problems. Jake nodded, watching our work. In 3 months, Lyra had proven herself invaluable. She understood alien cultures in ways that saved them from countless mistakes. More importantly, she had started making suggestions and taking initiative instead of just following orders. What about their business customs? Jake asked. Etherians value patience above all things. They speak very slowly and consider it rude to interrupt or rush a conversation. A simple negotiation might take several hours. Good thing we're not in a hurry. The ship's communication system chimed, indicating an incoming message. Jake activated the screen and saw the face of Captain Barnes, a human trader he had known for years. Jake, I need to warn you about something, Barnes said, his expression serious. There's been talk at the trading stations. Some people are saying you're taking advantage of that Caltharian girl. Jake felt his stomach tighten. What kind of talk? A group of Saurian traders led by someone called Krikstal has been spreading rumors. They're saying you're using her as slave labor and that the Commerce Guild should investigate. That's ridiculous. Lyra is my business partner. I know that, and you know that, but rumors can be dangerous in our line of work. Just watch your back. The message ended, and Jake turned to find Lyra standing behind him. Her scales had shifted to a worried purple color. Is this about me? She asked. Some traders are trying to cause trouble. They think I'm mistreating you. But you are not mistreating me. You have given me freedom to make choices, taught me about human customs, and shared profits with me as an equal partner. I know that, but some people don't understand our arrangement. Lyra's scales shifted through several colors before settling on determined orange. Then we must make them understand. 2 days later, they arrived at Rigel Station. The massive structure orbited a gas giant, its silver hull reflecting the light from the system's blue star. As they docked, Jake noticed several ships he recognized, including the distinctive black vessels used by Saurian traders. They made their way through the station to the Etherian habitat dome. The aliens lived in a section filled with thick, cloudy gas that allowed them to float freely. Jake and Lyra put on their pressure suits and entered the dome's airlock. The Etherians were unlike anything in human science fiction. They looked like living clouds with sparks of light dancing inside them. They moved slowly through their gas-filled environment, speaking in low tones that vibrated through the thick atmosphere. Welcome, travelers from distant stars, the lead Etherian said. Its voice was like wind through leaves. We have heard of your reputation for fair dealing. The negotiation took nearly 3 hours, just as Lyra had predicted. The Etherians wanted to buy human-made electronics that could function in high-pressure environments. In return, they offered rare crystals that could store enormous amounts of energy. Halfway through the discussion, Lyra made a suggestion that surprised everyone. Honored Etherians, perhaps we could arrange a 3-way trade. The Vorthic crystal miners need pressure-resistant equipment for their deep mines. They would pay well for human electronics designed for your environment. The lead Etherian's lights pulsed with interest. This is an intriguing possibility. Such equipment would indeed be valuable to Gasworld miners. Jake smiled inside his helmet. Lyra had just suggested a deal that would triple their profits by connecting 3 different species' needs. It was exactly the kind of creative thinking that made her such a valuable partner. When they finally completed the negotiations, both Jake and Lyra were exhausted but pleased. They had secured contracts that would keep them busy for months. As they left the Habitat Dome, they found a group of aliens waiting for them. Jake recognized Crickstall, the Saurian trader who had been spreading rumors. The lizard-like alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, with red scales and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. "Human Morrison," Crickstall hissed. "We need to speak with you about your treatment of the Caltharian female." "There's nothing to discuss," Jake replied. "Lyra is my business partner." "Partners are not bound by honor debts," another Saurian said. "We have investigated your arrangement. The female was wagered like property, and now serves you under legal compulsion." Lyra stepped forward, her scales showing bright, angry red. "I speak for myself, Saurian. No one serves Jake Morrison under compulsion." "You are required to say such things to protect your master," Crickstall said dismissively. "My master?" Lyra's scales shifted to colors Jake had never seen before, swirling patterns of red and orange that seemed to pulse with her anger. "Jake Morrison is not my master. He is my partner, my teacher, and my friend. He has shown me what it means to choose my own path." "Prove it," Crickstall challenged. "If you are truly free, then leave him now. Walk away and choose your own future." Lyra was quiet for a moment, her scales shifting to thoughtful blue. "I could leave," she said finally. "Jake has told me this many times. But I choose to stay because we work well together. We make each other stronger." "Empty words?" Crickstall spat. "You stay because you must." "No," Lyra said firmly. "Watch and learn the difference." She turned to Jake, her scales now showing the soft green-gold color that meant determination mixed with affection. "Jake Morrison, I formally dissolve the honor debt between us. My father's wager is complete, and I am free of all obligations." Jake felt a moment of panic. "Lyra, you don't have to. I am not finished," she continued. "Now that I am free to choose, I offer you a new partnership. Equal shares, equal decisions, equal respect. Will you accept?" Jake smiled, feeling a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying lift from his shoulders. "I accept, partner." Lyra's scales erupted in brilliant patterns of gold and silver that Jake had never seen before. Around them, the crowd of aliens murmured, in various languages. Even Crickstall seemed surprised by this turn of events. "Furthermore," Lyra continued, turning back to the Saurian, "I will demonstrate my freedom by making an independent business decision. Jake, I believe we should refuse to trade with anyone who questions our partnership. Our reputation is worth more than any single deal." "Agreed," Jake said. "Crickstall, you and your associates are no longer welcome to trade with us." The Saurian's yellow eyes blazed with anger, but he could not argue with Lyra's demonstration of independence. She had proven that she stayed by choice, not compulsion. As they walked back to their ship, Jake felt a new understanding between them. What had started as an obligation had become a genuine partnership built on mutual respect and shared goals. "That was impressive back there," Jake said. "You didn't have to dissolve the honor debt." "Yes, I did," Lyra replied, her scales showing contentment. "As long as the debt existed, people would always question whether I acted freely. Now there can be no doubt. And now we are partners by choice. That makes us stronger than any legal bond ever could." That evening, as they traveled toward their next destination, Jake realized that his biggest business success had come not from the deals they made, but from learning to see Lyra as an equal. She had taught him the true partnership required, not just shared profits, but shared respect and shared freedom to choose. Lyra, meanwhile, had discovered something she never expected, that choosing her own path did not mean abandoning honor or family loyalty. Instead, it meant finding new ways to honor both her heritage and her future. together. They were building something neither of their cultures had imagined before, a partnership that transcended species, custom, and law, based on nothing more and nothing less than mutual choice and respect. Jake woke to the sound of alarms blaring throughout his ship. Red emergency lights flashed in the darkness of his cabin. He rolled out of bed and rushed to the main control room, where he found Lyra already at the communications console. Her scales were showing deep purple, which meant serious concern. "What's happening?" Jake asked, sliding into the pilot's seat. "3 Commerce Guild enforcement ships just surrounded us," Lyra said. "They're demanding we shut down engines and prepare." "For boarding?" "Boarding? What for?" Before Lyra could answer, a stern voice filled the cabin through the ship's speakers. "This is Commander Stevens of the Commerce Guild Enforcement Division. You are under arrest for smuggling illegal weapons and violating interstellar trade laws. Shut down your engines immediately." Jake and Lyra looked at each other in shock. "There must be some mistake," Jake said into the communicator. "We're not carrying any weapons. Our scanners show otherwise. You have 60 seconds to comply, or we will disable your ship by force." Jake had no choice but to shut down the engines. Within minutes, armed enforcement officers in spacesuits were boarding his ship. They moved through the cargo hold with scanning equipment, checking every container. "Here," one of them called out, "Container 77 Alpha. Massive energy readings consistent with plasma weapons." "That's impossible," Jake protested. "That container has medical supplies for the research station at Kepler 4. The officer broke the seal on the container and opened it. Inside, nestled, among legitimate medical equipment, were a dozen cylindrical devices that definitely looked like weapons. They hummed with dangerous energy. "Medical supplies?" Commander Stevens asked, his voice cold. "These are military-grade plasma rifles, capable of destroying armored vehicles." Jake felt his world spinning. "I don't understand. We bought those supplies from a licensed medical dealer on Titan Station. We have all the paperwork." "Paperwork can be forged," Stevens said. "You and your partner are under arrest for weapons smuggling. Your ship and cargo are impounded pending investigation." They were taken to a holding facility on the nearest station. Jake and Lyra found themselves in separate cells, unable to talk to each other or contact anyone outside. Hours passed before they were allowed to meet with a legal representative. The lawyer was a thin human woman named Lisa Chung, who specialized in interstellar trade law. She looked tired and overworked as she sat across from them in the small meeting room. "The evidence against you is substantial," she said, reading from a datapad. "The weapons were found in your cargo hold, clearly marked as medical supplies. The forgery is quite sophisticated." "But we didn't forge anything," Jake insisted. "We bought those supplies legally. We have receipts, transfer documents, everything." "The documents appear to be genuine, but the seller claims he never dealt with you. He says someone must have stolen his identification codes to create false records." Lyra's scales had been dark blue since their arrest, but now they shifted to angry. "Red? This is a setup. Someone planned this to destroy our reputation." "That's a serious accusation," Chang said. "Do you have any evidence?" Jake thought about the enemies they had made, especially Krikstal and his Saurian associates. "We've had problems with some competitors. They've been spreading rumors about us." "Rumors are not evidence. If you're going to claim this is a frame-up, you need proof." Over the next few days, their situation got worse. News of their arrest spread through the trading community. Former business partners stopped returning their calls. New contracts were canceled. Their reputation, built over months of careful work, crumbled in a matter of hours. The worst part was watching how the arrest affected Lyra. Her scales rarely showed any color except dark blue now, and she spoke less and less each day. During one of their brief meetings, She made a suggestion that horrified Jake. "I have been thinking about our situation," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "There is a way to save you from this disgrace." "What are you talking about?" "Under Caltharian law, I can claim full responsibility for the crime. I can say that I arranged the illegal shipment without your knowledge, using my understanding of trade procedures to deceive you." Jake stared at her. "That's not true, and you know it. Truth is less important than honor. If I take responsibility, you will be freed. Your reputation can be restored." "And what happens to you?" Lyra's scales went so dark they were almost black. "I would be exiled from all trading stations, banned from ever conducting business again. But you would be safe." "Absolutely not," Jake said firmly. "I won't let you destroy your life to save mine. It is my choice to make. No, it's not. We're partners, remember? We make decisions together. And together, we're going to find a way out of this." But as the days passed, their options seemed to disappear. The evidence against them was strong, and they had no way to prove their innocence from inside a jail cell. Jake spent his time going over every detail of their recent trades, trying to figure out how someone could have planted the weapons in their cargo dot, and Lyra had an idea that changed everything. "Jake," she said during one of their meetings, "do you remember when we stopped at Rigel Station? We left our ship unattended for several hours while we were in the Etherian Habitat Dome." "Yes, but the ship was locked and monitored by Station security. Station security that could be bribed or deceived. And who was at Rigel Station when we were there?" Jake felt a spark of hope. Crixtall and his associates. Exactly. And they would have had access to the kind of sophisticated forging equipment needed to create false medical supplier documents. But how do we prove it? Lyra's scales shifted to determined orange for the first time in days. "We need to get access to the station's security records. If we can show that Saurian traders had access to our ship, it would support our claim of being framed. Our lawyer already tried that. The station won't release security footage without a court order, and the court won't issue an order without evidence of wrongdoing. Then we need to find another way." That night, Jake lay in his cell thinking about their situation. They were trapped by a system that demanded proof they couldn't obtain. But maybe there was another approach. Instead of trying to prove their innocence directly, perhaps they could prove someone else's guilt. The next morning, he called for their lawyer. When Chang arrived, Jake had a new request. "I want you to investigate Crixtall and his associates. Look into their recent business dealings, their financial records, anything that might show a pattern of illegal activity. That would be expensive, and it might not lead anywhere," Chung warned. "Do it anyway. If someone went to this much trouble to frame us, they've probably done it before. And if they've done it before, there might be evidence." Chung agreed to start the investigation, but warned them it could take weeks to get results. Jake and Lyra prepared themselves for a long wait in jail, but they had something they hadn't had before: hope. 3 days later, Chung returned with news that changed everything. "I found something," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. Crixtall's financial records show large payments from several competing trading companies over the past year. Companies that benefited when their rivals were arrested for various crimes. "He's been doing this to other traders?" Lyra asked. "It looks that way. And there's more. One of the companies that paid him is called Titan Medical Supplies." Jake felt his heart racing. "That's where we bought the medical equipment." "Right, which means Crixtall had inside access to their systems. He could have arranged for the weapons to be planted in your shipment and the paperwork to be forged." "Is this enough to get us released?" Chung smiled for the first time since they had met her. "It's enough to demand a full investigation. And once that investigation starts, I think we'll find a lot more evidence of what's really been going on." As they sat in that small meeting room, Jake realized that their ordeal had revealed something important. When everything seemed lost, when their future looked hopeless, Lyra had been willing to sacrifice herself to save him. And he had been willing to stay in jail rather than let her take the blame for something she didn't do. They weren't just business partners anymore. They had become something deeper, two people who cared more about each other's welfare than their own success. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within a week, Commerce Guild investigators had uncovered a web of corruption that reached across multiple trading stations. Krickstahl and his associates had been systematically destroying competitors. Through false accusations and planted evidence, Jake and Lyra were released from jail on a bright morning when the artificial sun cycle was just beginning in their section of the station. They walked out of the detention center together, blinking in the light they hadn't seen for 2 weeks. "It feels strange to be free," Lyra said, her scales showing the soft blue-green color that meant relief mixed with caution. "Free and vindicated," Jake added. "Chang says the guild is going to make a public announcement clearing our names." They made their way back to the docking bay where their ship was impounded. The cargo hold had been searched thoroughly, but everything was still there. More importantly, their reputation was about to be restored. Commander Stevens met them at their ship. The same man who had arrested them now looked embarrassed as he handed Jake the release papers. "On behalf of the Commerce Guild, I apologize for the wrongful arrest," Stevens said. "We've recovered evidence proving that Krickstahl's organization planted the weapons in your cargo and forged the medical supplier documents." "What's going to happen to them?" Jake asked. "Krickstahl and 7 associates are under arrest. They'll face trial for fraud, conspiracy, and weapons trafficking. We've also identified at least 12 other trading operations that were targeted by their scheme." Lyra's scales shifted to satisfied orange. "Justice is being served." "There's more," Stevens continued. "The Guild is offering compensation for your wrongful imprisonment and the damage to your business reputation. We're also prepared to guarantee contracts with 3 major shipping companies to help rebuild your operation." It was more than Jake had hoped for. Not only were they cleared of all charges, but they would emerge from the ordeal stronger than before. As Stevens left, Jake turned to find Lyra staring at the stars visible through the docking bay's observation windows. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Freedom," she said softly. "When we were in jail, I realized something. The honor debt that brought me to you was truly finished the moment I chose to stay as your partner, but there was still something binding me." "What do you mean?" Lyra turned to face him, her scales showing colors he had never seen before, swirling patterns of gold and silver mixed with deep blue. "I was afraid to admit how I really felt about you. I told myself it was just gratitude or friendship or respect for your business skills." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. "And now?" "Now I understand that what I feel is love. Not the obligation of a servant to a master, not the loyalty of a junior partner to a senior one. Love between equals who choose to share their lives." Jake reached out and gently touched her hand. Her scales immediately shifted to the warm gold color that meant happiness and affection. "I love you too, Lyra. I think I've been in love with you for months, but I was afraid to say anything. I didn't want you to think I was taking advantage of our situation. And I was afraid you could never see me as more than the alien girl your father wagered away." They stood there in the docking bay, holding hands and looking into each other's eyes. Jake marveled at how Lyra's scales reflected her emotions like a living canvas of feeling. She was beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with human standards of beauty and everything to do with who she was as a person. "So what happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we choose our future together," Lyra said, "as equals, as partners, and as whatever else we want to be." Over the next few days, they made several important decisions. First, they formalized their business partnership with legal documents that made them true equals in their trading operation. Second, they began planning a ceremony that would honor both human and Caltharian customs for joining their lives together. The wedding took place 3 months later on Nexus Station, in the same trading hall where they had first met. Representatives from dozens of species attended, including several other interspecies couples who had been inspired by Jake and Lyra's example. HFY, Lyra's father, traveled from the Caltharian homeworld to attend. He had aged since Jake last saw him, but his scales showed proud purple as he watched his daughter exchange vows. "I thought I had lost my honor when I made that foolish wager," he told Jake after the ceremony. "But watching my daughter now, I see that she has found something more valuable than honor. She has found happiness and respect." "She's taught me a lot about both honor and happiness," Jake replied. "I'm grateful for the chance to learn from her." The human ceremony was brief and simple, focusing on their commitment to support each other as equals. A Caltharian portion was more elaborate, involving the exchange of specially grown crystals that would change color to reflect the health of their relationship. Ben Carter, a human engineer who had become one of their closest friends, served. As Jake's best man, "I've watched you two work together for months," he said in his speech. "You've shown everyone that partnership isn't about power or control. It's about bringing out the best in each other." Kil-Ara, an insectoid Zephyrian who specialized in data analysis, spoke for Lyra. "In my species, we believe that true bonds are formed not by law or obligation, but by choice renewed each day. What Jake and Lyra have built together is a daily choice to be better together than they could be apart." After the ceremony, Jake and Lyra returned to their ship, now officially renamed Second Chance, to reflect their new beginning. They had contracts lined up for the next 6 months, including several that would take them to parts of the galaxy neither had visited before. "Are you ready for this?" Jake asked as they prepared to depart Nexus Station. "I've been ready since the day I realized I could choose my own path," Lyra replied. Her scales showed the brilliant gold and silver patterns that Jake had learned meant pure joy. As their ship moved away from the station and jumped into hyperspace, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed. A year ago, he had been a lonely trader focused only on profit. Now he was part of something bigger, a partnership that had grown into love, a love that had overcome cultural barriers and legal complications. Lyra was no longer the frightened young woman who had arrived on his ship with a single bag of belongings. She had become a confident businesswoman, a respected member of the trading community, and someone who had taught him that true freedom meant having the power to choose who you wanted to become. Their first stop was a newly discovered system where a species called the Morphites had just made contact with galactic civilization. It would be dangerous work, requiring careful diplomacy and cultural sensitivity. But Jake and Lyra were ready for the challenge. "What do you think we'll find there?" Jake asked. "Something new," Lyra said, her scales showing the excited yellow color that meant adventure ahead. "Something that will teach us more about ourselves and each other. Together, always together, by choice, not by chance." As their ship traveled through the darkness between stars, Jake realized that the best things in life often came from the most unexpected places. A gambling debt had brought them together, but love and mutual respect had made them partners in every sense of the word. Behind them lay a trail of broken stereotypes and changed minds. Other interspecies couples were following their example, showing that love could transcend biological differences when it was built on genuine equality and respect. Ahead lay unknown worlds and new challenges, but Jake and Lyra would face them, as they had faced everything else together, as equals, and as proof that the universe was full of possibilities for those brave enough to choose love over fear. partnership over power, and hope over tradition not. Their story had begun with a wager, but it would continue as a choice they made new every day, to build something better together than either could achieve alone.